There are a lot of awesome JRPG franchises out there, and it can be daunting figuring out what games to start with, so today I want to highlight 11 of these franchises and one game that will bring you into them. 2 rules: the game recommended has to be available on modern platforms and the franchise has to have over 5 games. And we'll start with Final Fantasy, arguably the most well-known JRPG franchise. It's had numerous hits over the years, though Final Fantasy in later entries makes a lot of changes. It's rare now for the newer entries to stick to the formula of a prior game. The series now encompasses traditional turn-based RPGs, ATB systems, action-adventures and even MMOs, and that's purely in its mainline entries. There are a ton of spin-offs as well which shake it up even more, for better or worse. Yet for me, the best game to get a modern player into Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy X. In my eyes, this is the one that has consistently high quality throughout, but in the same breath has also aged better than many others. Final Fantasy X has a gripping and emotional story, compounded further by its amazing setting in Spira. Its turn-based battle system is solid, especially when adding in the novel sphere grid, allowing for more freedom when customizing the party as well. It's got a fantastic soundtrack, one of my favourites in the Final Fantasy series to date, and it was also a new frontier for the franchise in terms of offering fully realised 3D locales for the first time, and a complete score of voiceovers, which back when it first released was a big deal.
Years, and we never won a game. Well, after last year's tournament, I quit. Time seemed right.
There are some elements about Final Fantasy X that haven't aged too well, but considering how much of a step forward it was for the franchise and how amazing it undoubtedly still is, there is no better starting point in my eyes. Now, in the same vein as Final Fantasy, Square also has another flagship franchise, one that is bigger than even Final Fantasy is, at least in Japan. That is Dragon Quest, one of the most influential franchises within the genre. The problem with Dragon Quest though is that a lot of the entries are not accessible, with many of them stuck on older hardware like the 3DS, and even if you wanted a copy for yourself, you'll be paying an obscene amount of money for the privilege in some cases. Though, Dragon Quest does have a number of great games on more modern hardware, especially one of the highlights of the series in Dragon Quest III, which recently got a HD 2D remake, which will be my recommendation. Dragon Quest III encapsulates what the series is all about. It's about adventure, simple yet charming stories, a straightforward yet fun turn-based approach, and a massive world to get lost in with plenty of optional content to get stuck in too. Unlike Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest sticks more to its roots as well. There's not much difference at the structural level between mainline entries, and there are a bunch of spin-offs like the well-regarded Monsters sub-series. And Dragon Quest III is the perfect image for that. What you see in 3 is replicated in so many other entries too. And if you do so happen to like what this one has to offer, you won't have to wait long for 2 more remakes in the same vein, as Square are giving the same treatment to Dragon Quest 1 and 2 as well, which are hopefully releasing in 2025. Right, now we move to one of my personal favourite franchises, which is Ys. The Ys series has been going strong for years, widely regarded as the pioneer for action RPGs we see today, starting way back in 1987. At a time when many other contemporaries like the aforementioned Dragon Quest series were turn-based, Ys and Neon Falcom shook it up a bit, and created an RPG with fast-paced, real-time combat, and that identity has stuck with the series right up to its latest entry, Ys X. Though it's not Ys X that gets my recommendation, it will always go instead to Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana, and that's because it is the best game in the series and available on a multitude of platforms to boot. Ys 8 excels in the key areas that makes the series special. The sense of adventure and mystery is there, with the beautiful yet dangerous island of Saren as the setting. Its fast-paced combat is at the forefront of the journey. It features the recognisable mute protagonist Adol Kristin, who communicates mostly in nods and grunts. The synth rock music is some of the best the genre has to offer, and Dana is just a joy of a character. For me, the best female lead in the series, or at least tied for it. For me, there's little to dislike about Ys 8, and I always recommend this one as a starting point when I get asked a question about it. Most of the time, it works as well. Now, after mentioning Ys, the next one has to be the other flagship series from Neon Falcom, which is Trails, a series that I'm very happy to say is becoming more and more popular as the years pass. There's been a real push to get all the games out faster, with 2025 representing a year where the West is fully caught up with the Japanese releases, something that wasn't even a dream 5 years ago. Oh, and I'll throw this in too, it is my favourite JRPG franchise of the lot. If you're unfamiliar with Trails, it's a series with 13 games at present, but the special thing about them is that they're all interconnected to make one grand story, with many characters and events feeding into multiple arcs across the fictional continent of Zemuria. In order of release, you have the Sky Trilogy, Crossbell Duo, the 4 Cold Steel games, Reverie, and finally the Calvard games, which are still ongoing. In essence, many of the beginning games within these arcs are fine as a starting point, though there generally is a need to then revert to the older ones to grasp the complete picture. But for me, I'm going to recommend the game that isn't even out yet, because when it does come out later this year, it will be the undisputed optimal starting point, and there's no question about that. Bring up to the podium Trails in the Sky First Chapter, which is a remake of the first game in the series. Sky First Chapter was made primarily as a way of alleviating the barrier to entry for the Trails series. Not only will it polish up some more outdated aspects of the older games, but it will also have some additions made to tie it into the wider series too. Not many, but just enough to give a new player a sense of what Trails is all about. I'd still say games like Cold Steel 1 and the first Daybreak are fine too, as well as the original Sky First Chapter for obvious reasons, but if you can wait, I think this remake will be the clear winner. Now, if we're talking about interconnected stories, it only makes sense to highlight this series as well, which also started around the mid-2000s, which is the Yakuza franchise, or Like a Dragon as it's known now. Like a Dragon is an interesting one. It started as an action beat-em-up and has now transitioned into turn-based gameplay for its later mainline entries, though the various spin-offs still maintain the action-centric approach. Still, while I've no doubt the turn-based games will have more of a pull for viewers here, I don't see any reason not to start with Yakuza 0, the first game chronologically in the series. And that's because Yakuza 0 is such a great game. It encapsulates the awesome parts of the franchise while also making players aware of its unhinged aspects too. At its core, Yakuza 0 has an amazing story with equally brilliant leads. It's mature, gritty, complex, and not for the faint of heart. But on the side, it then has a bunch of mini-games, some of the best the genre has to offer. It has some really good side stories, a surprisingly deep combat approach, especially as you progress further into the skill trees, and really solid cinematography to boot. In my eyes, there's no reason not to start here. It's generally easy to find on modern platforms, it's cheap, and it's just a solid game from title to credits. Moving away from an easily accessible franchise now to one that's a bit more limited in terms of availability, and that's because you can only play it on a Nintendo console. But if you do have a Switch, you can pick up one of the finest modern JRPG franchises of the era, which are the Xenoblade games. And once again, there's no reason in my eyes not to start with the first game, which is Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition in this case. Xenoblade Chronicles was pretty much the point where Monolith Soft as a studio found their calling. The original game opened the eyes of Nintendo and made them aware that a game like this had a market. There was a real risk that at one point Xenoblade Chronicles, the original one at least, wouldn't even be released in America, which was ironic as Europe did get this game in 2011, resulting in its iconic British voice acting.
They say that before time began, it was wielded by the Bionis. The same Bionis that we all live on. It must have a secret. That's how Dunban was able to destroy so many Mechon.
Nintendo of America, on the other hand, didn't see the appeal of the game. It was only through an unofficial fan campaign known as Operation Rainfall that the game was eventually picked up by Nintendo of America 2 years after its Japanese release. And from there, despite a slow start, it's become a classic and a mainstay of the Nintendo pantheon. When characters from the series end up on a Smash roster, the series has made it. And the reason the series has gained acclaim is because the games are just brilliant. Xenoblade Chronicles at least formed the roadmap that many of the sequels followed. A fantastic and gripping story, which does have some connections to later games, amazing music courtesy of Yasunori Mitsuda, himself an icon of video game composition, a truly awe-inspiring world and overall mythos, plus hours upon hours of gameplay for those looking for value for money. In terms of modern franchises, few can beat out Xenoblade. Now, if we're talking Nintendo, it's only right to jump over to another one of their top franchises. Funnily enough, this one also came close to ending, but was saved right at the death by a last hurrah, subsequently turning it into a juggernaut for the present day. That series is the SRPG monolith of Fire Emblem, and the game I'll put up is Fire Emblem Engage. Admittedly not my favourite, but a lot of the games are difficult to access. As for modern hardware, while you can access the likes of Blazing Blade via the Switch Online service, the ones that are exclusively on the console itself are limited between Fire Emblem Three Houses and Fire Emblem Engage. No doubt to me that Fire Emblem Three Houses is the better game overall, but I think Engage is a better starting point for two reasons. Initially, it doesn't require 4 playthroughs to see the complete story, and 2, Engage has the better gameplay. There's no doubt in my mind that Engage has a poor story all said and done. Calling it Saturday morning cartoon level would be generous. But its strategic gameplay on the other hand is the best I've seen in the series to date. The emblems just add another dimension to the already solid strategic foundation, and it just gets better when you consider the DLC as well. In addition, Engage is sort of like an all-stars compilation for Fire Emblem, bringing in many characters from other games too. So if you find yourself hooked on this one, and find an emblem that you like, you can just search up the character and find out where they're from, giving you a rabbit hole to delve deeper into. Alright, back to Square Enix now, because it's not just Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest that have made waves for them over the years. There was another one which fused essences of an original story, Final Fantasy, and also Disney of all things. Kingdom Hearts is that franchise, and the game to start with will be the first one. Kingdom Hearts is an interesting one. It's certainly a more divisive franchise than say the other two we've mentioned earlier, but I like Kingdom Hearts quite a bit. No doubt part of that is because I was a 90s kid and I grew up with a lot of the Disney movies of that era, many of which are featured in Kingdom Hearts. I remember being introduced to this game by a friend of mine when I was like 10. He had a PS2 and he was eager to show me what this game was all about. I went to his house, he turned it on, and lo and behold, that game was Kingdom Hearts. We played that all day right up until it was time for me to go home. It has a huge amount of charm, no question. Now the story is interconnected between entries, there's lots of different plot threads within it, and though it can be a bit difficult to keep up to speed with what's happening, it is still good. The action-based combat utilising the Keyblades is great, the reimagined Disney world that you visit are a highlight of the game, the music is brilliant, and it's got a fair amount of optional bosses for those looking for a challenge. The first Kingdom Hearts has it all, and if you find yourself latching onto this one, you've got a massive franchise to check out at the click of a button. Anyway, back to turn-based games now, and it'll be Atlus up to the spot with Shin Megami Tensei, and the game that will be recommended is Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, a recent re-release of the Switch exclusive original. Shin Megami Tensei is an old series starting way back in '92, which in itself was a sub-series of the Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei franchise that begun in 1987. Shin Megami Tensei though in the present day is widely known as its own franchise, but unfortunately isn't the most accessible, with many mainline entries confined to handhelds, mobile, or being outright exclusive to Japan, not to mention being extremely expensive in many cases if you want a copy. For me, Vengeance gets the nod though because it's a brilliant game that illustrates everything the franchise is about, but at the same time isn't as brutal as contemporaries like Nocturne, at least when limited to its main story. SMT5 has less of a focus on story, it's more about the gameplay. The self-insert mute protagonist wanders around the desolate wasteland of Tokyo finding demons, enlisting them as allies through negotiation, bribing, or just straight up violence. And the core gameplay involves fusing said demons into stronger variations, all while gaining more power for yourself. This approach is consolidated further with one of the best iterations of turn-based gameplay around in the press turn system. The game is oozing in atmosphere, the music is once again great, it's undoubtedly addictive from gameplay alone, and there's always that sense of danger in the world. It's a game that is more for those looking for a challenge, especially when considering the optional bosses. Now if we mention Shin Megami Tensei, you can't ignore the other franchise that basically formed from it, which has actually surpassed its predecessor in the present day in terms of popularity, that being Persona. Persona 3 Reload gets my vote, though I could easily recommend both Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royal as well, but Reload is the most recent, so it gets the nod this time around. Persona 3 once again is just a brilliant game, a highlight of 2024 for me, and a great starting point as I had never played any of the previous iterations of the game. Its gameplay was clearly refined to fit more in line with those who had jumped into the franchise with Persona 5 in terms of quality of life, but the core identity of its press-turn combat remains, this idea of focusing on weaknesses and placing a lot more importance on the input of the player. Persona 3 Reload also excels in terms of its social sim aspects, bringing in a host of enjoyable side characters who join the self-insert protag, along with a bunch of social links to confidants representing the different arcana which in themselves enrich the gameplay further. The story centered around the mystery of the Dark Hour is really good, my personal favourite in the series thus far. Music is just a given for this franchise, it rules, it's got its own unique style right down to its menu navigation as well. The only thing that was a negative for me was the dungeon crawling around the game's central dungeon of Tartarus. I'm not really a fan of that approach, but the gameplay was good enough that I was happy to keep going. You can't go wrong with Persona in the modern day, it's popular for a reason, and you're doing a disservice not playing at least one of the games. Right, one more to go, and while not as popular as Persona or Shin Megami Tensei, this final franchise has grown considerably in recent years and is one of my top 3 JRPG series along with Trails and Ys, which is Atelier. And I love this franchise because it does not follow the contemporary approach of a JRPG. Atelier games are a niche within a niche, and often do it extremely well. And the game that gets my nod in terms of illustrating that identity will be the original Atelier Sophie. No doubt, it looks and feels outdated in some aspects, it's very simple in many areas like the story and the combat, but Atelier never focuses on those areas, it has always been about its crafting and characters. The crafting in particular being a highlight despite being overlooked in many other games. Alchemy, and the amount by which a player interacts with it, will determine if they get destroyed by seemingly weak enemies or become a god that can blast away anything in a single swipe. The beauty of Atelier is that you can break the game if you understand its crafting, though what makes it satisfying is that you often need to put the effort in for that privilege. Understanding how the crafting works, how to move traits between ingredients, compounding them into stronger variants, and looping them back into themselves are hallmarks of what Atelier is all about. And if you're more in tune with a game where you just want to enjoy a comfortable and relaxing JRPG with very little stress, Atelier is the series that fills that hole, with Atelier Sophie being one of the better ones because it also strips away the time limit that many of the other games have. Sophie is just all around a game that represents what Atelier is, and does it really well. Like I say, it may seem outdated in aspects, but its core experience is on the money. The grid-based crafting is brilliant, the characters are a joy, the music is whimsical and charming, and if you do happen to like this one, you've got a direct sequel to it which in my eyes is the best of the series to date. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe for more JRPG content, and consider joining my Patreon if you're interested. Peace!